If someone had told me that my own son would choose his mother-in-law over me at his party, I would have laughed. But as I stood there, humiliated in front of everyone, I realized that Diane Williams was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. I was arranging flowers in my kitchen when my phone rang. It was my son Michael, and something in his voice made me pause. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you about Saturday's party," he said, his words careful and measured. For weeks, I'd been planning what to wear to his housewarming celebration. Michael and his wife Jessica had just bought their dream home in the suburbs, and I was so proud. At 68, after losing my husband Robert 5 years ago, seeing my children succeed was everything to me. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, setting down my scissors. "Well, Jessica's mother is flying in from Denver. You know how important this is to her." I smiled, genuinely happy. "Of course. Mrs. Patterson should be there. It's her daughter's new home, too." There was a long pause. Too long. "The thing is, Mom, Jessica feels like having both mothers there might be overwhelming. You know how she gets anxious with too many people." My stomach dropped, but I tried to stay positive. "Oh, well, maybe I could come earlier to help set up, then leave before—" "Mom, no." His voice was firmer now. "Jessica really needs this to go perfectly. Her mother is, well, she's more helpful with these things. She knows about entertaining, decorating, that stuff." The words hit me like a slap. Robert used to say I threw the best dinner parties in the neighborhood, but that was before Jessica came along and decided everything I did was outdated. "I understand," I whispered, though I didn't understand at all. "I knew you'd get it, Mom. You're always so understanding. Maybe we can have lunch next week instead." After I hung up, I sat in my empty kitchen, surrounded by Robert's favorite flowers, and felt smaller than I had since his funeral. This was supposed to be a family celebration, but apparently I wasn't the right kind of family anymore. I looked at the gift I'd already wrapped, a beautiful crystal vase that had been in Robert's family for generations. I'd planned to give it to them as a housewarming present, something meaningful to start their new life. Now it just sat there, mocking me. What I didn't know was that Jessica had been planning this moment for months, and what my son didn't know was that his casual cruelty had just awakened something in me that had been sleeping since Robert died. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to that party after all, because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody expects to fight back. After my son uninvited me from his own housewarming party, I did something I'd never done in my 68 years. I decided to crash it. Saturday morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt since Robert's death. I put on my best dress, the navy blue one he always said brought out my eyes, and drove to Michael's new house. As I pulled up to the suburban street, I could see cars everywhere. The party was in full swing, and through the windows, I glimpsed my son laughing with guests I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I picked up the crystal vase. 3 generations of Williams women had been gifted this at their new homes. I wasn't about to let that tradition die because Jessica preferred her own mother. Walking up the driveway, I could hear music and conversation floating from the backyard. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Michael opened the door and his face went white. "Mom? What are you—" "I thought we talked about this." "We did talk, Michael. You talked, I listened. Now I'm here to give you your housewarming gift." I could see Jessica appear behind him, her face tight with fury. She was a petite woman who always looked perfectly put together, but right now she looked like she wanted to disappear. "Diane," Jessica said, her voice artificially sweet. "How unexpected." Behind her stood a woman I'd never met, tall, elegant, with silver hair styled perfectly. She was arranging a floral centerpiece like she owned the place. "Mom," Jessica continued, turning to the woman, "this is Michael's mother." The pause before mother felt like a knife twist. The elegant woman, Mrs. Patterson, looked me up and down with the kind of smile that wasn't really a smile. "Oh, how nice. Jessica has told me so much about you." I doubted that was true, but I held out the vase anyway. "This is for you both. It's been in the Williams family for 3 generations. Jessica barely glanced at it. "Oh, that's very thoughtful. Why don't I just put this in the kitchen for now?" She took the vase like it was a piece of junk mail, not a family heirloom. Actually, Mrs. Patterson interrupted, I brought a complete set of Waterford crystal from Ireland. It's already displayed in the dining room. Perhaps this could go somewhere else? The dismissal was so casual, so complete, that I felt my cheeks burn. Michael just stood there, saying nothing. My son, the boy I'd raised, sacrificed for, supported through college, just watched his wife and mother-in-law dismiss me like I was nobody. Well, I said quietly, I can see you're busy. Actually, Jessica said, glancing at Mrs. Patterson, we're about to start the house tour for the important guests. Maybe you could come back another time? Important guests. The message was clear. I wasn't one of them. I looked at my son one more time, hoping he'd say something, anything. But he just looked uncomfortable, like I was the problem. Of course, I said. I understand perfectly. I turned and walked back to my car, my head held high even though my heart was breaking. Behind me, I could hear the party continuing, Mrs. Patterson's voice already commanding attention again. As I drove home, I realized this wasn't just about one party. This was about my entire place in my son's life. And if they thought I was going to fade quietly into the background, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. After being humiliated at my son's party, I went home to lick my wounds. But what I discovered next turned my hurt into pure fury. That evening, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, Carol, who'd lived next door for 20 years. Diane, honey, I wasn't sure if I should call, but, well, I think you should know what people are saying. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I ran into Jessica at the grocery store yesterday. She was with her mother, and they were talking about you. Carol hesitated, and I could tell she didn't want to hurt me more than I was already hurting. Please, Carol, I need to know. Jessica told her mother that you've been difficult since Robert died, that you're too needy, always calling Michael, trying to insert yourself into their marriage. She said you don't understand boundaries. Each word hit me like a physical blow. Needy? I called Michael once a week, maybe twice. I'd bent over backward to give them space. There's more, Carol continued reluctantly. Mrs. Patterson asked if Michael was going to do something about the situation. Jessica said they were working on it, that they needed to help you understand your place in their family. My place. Like I was some kind of charity case instead of Michael's mother. After Carol hung up, I did something I'd never done before. I looked at Jessica's Facebook page. Robert used to handle all our technology, but I'd been slowly learning since he passed. What I found there made me physically sick. There were dozens of photos from the housewarming party. Jessica and Mrs. Patterson arranging flowers together. Mrs. Patterson giving toasts. The two of them posed with Michael like some perfect family unit. But it was the captions that destroyed me. So grateful for my amazing mother-in-law. She flew all the way from Denver to help make our new house a home. Some mothers-in-law are such a blessing. Blessed with the best, real family. Real family. The implication was clear. I wasn't real family. The comments were even worse. Friends of Jessica's I'd never met, all praising Mrs. Patterson's class and elegance. One comment made my hands shake. You're so lucky. Wish I had a mother-in-law like yours instead of, well, you know how it is. LOL. Jessica had responded with crying, laughing emojis. They were all laughing about me. The woman who'd given birth to her husband, who'd raised him, sacrificed for him, loved him unconditionally. I was a joke to them. Then my phone rang again. This time, it was my sister-in-law, Linda. Diane, I just got off the phone with Michael. I think you need to know what he said. I couldn't take much more, but I listened. He called to ask about Robert's life insurance. Specifically, he wanted to know if you'd received everything you were entitled to. He seemed very interested in the details of your financial situation. The blood drained from my face. What did you tell him? Nothing specific. But Diane, why would he be asking about your money? Unless... She didn't need to finish. I knew exactly what she was thinking. After Linda hung up, I sat in Robert's chair in our living room, my living room now, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something else, something stronger, something Robert would have recognized from our early years together, before marriage softened my edges. I was angry, not just sad or disappointed, furious. That night, I opened Robert's old filing cabinet for the first time since his death. If Michael wanted to know about my finances, maybe it was time I found out exactly what I was worth. And what I discovered in those files would change everything. After discovering my son's true intentions, I decided to reach out to family for support. What I learned broke my heart all over again. Monday morning, I called my daughter Sarah first. Surely she would understand how I was feeling. "Mom, I heard about the party," she said before I could even explain. "Michael told me you showed up uninvited." "Sarah, he uninvited me because Jessica wanted her mother there instead." "How is that fair?" There was a pause that lasted too long. "Mom, maybe Jessica has a point. You have been calling a lot since Dad died, and you do have strong opinions about how they should live their lives." I felt like she'd slapped me through the phone. "Strong opinions?" I suggested they might want to keep Robert's rocking chair. "That's hardly controlling." "But Mom, it's their house. They should decorate it how they want." "It was your father's chair, Sarah. The one he rocked you both in as babies." "I know, but Mom, maybe it's time to accept that things change. Michael has a new family now." New family. There was that phrase again. I called my brother next, then my sister. Each conversation was a variation of the same theme. I needed to give them space. I was having trouble adjusting to widowhood. Maybe I should consider counseling. Finally, I called Robert's sister, Margaret. She was 75 and had never been one to sugarcoat anything. "Diane, honey, I've been waiting for you to call. Linda told me about Michael's questions regarding Robert's insurance." "Margaret, I don't understand what's happening. I feel like I'm losing my mind." "You're not losing anything except your illusions. That boy has always been weak, and that wife of his saw an opportunity the moment Robert died." Margaret's bluntness was exactly what I needed. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. You're 68, alone, presumably well off thanks to Robert's planning. To a certain kind of person, you look like a convenient ATM with an expiration date." The words were harsh, but they rang true. "But he's my son, Margaret. I raised him. I loved him." "Of course you did. But love doesn't always create character, honey. Sometimes it creates entitlement." That afternoon, Sarah called me back. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Michael asked me about Dad's will. He wanted to know if you were planning to update yours." My hands went cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him it was none of his business. But Mom, he's not the only one asking questions. Jessica called me too. She wanted to know about Dad's pension, whether you have long-term care insurance, stuff like that." "Why would she need to know about my long-term care insurance?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. I think they're planning for your future, Mom, without asking you." That evening, I found myself staring at the family photo on my mantel. Michael's graduation from college. I'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for that education. Robert had worked overtime for months. And now they were circling like vultures, counting my money while I was still alive. That's when I decided to do something Robert had always advised, but I'd never needed. I was going to find out exactly what I was worth and exactly how to protect it. What I discovered would shock even me. After realizing my own family was treating me like a walking bank account, I decided to discover exactly what I was worth. I had no idea I was about to become a very dangerous woman. Robert's home office had remained untouched since his death. I'd been too grief-stricken to face sorting through his papers, and honestly, he'd always handled our finances. I trusted him completely and never felt the need to understand the details. But sitting in his leather chair, pulling open filing cabinet drawers, I realized I'd been living like a poor widow when I was anything but. The first folder was labeled Life Insurance, Diane. My hands shook as I opened it. The policy was for $500,000 more than I'd thought. Robert had increased it in the last year of his life without telling me. The second folder was Investment Portfolio, Williams Family Trust. Williams Family Trust? I'd never heard of such a thing. As I read through the documents, my mouth fell open. Robert hadn't just been the middle manager I thought he was. He'd been investing our money for 40 years, reinvesting dividends, buying rental properties I knew nothing about. The total value made me sit down hard in his chair. We weren't just comfortable. We were wealthy, very wealthy. The third folder contained property deeds. Not just for our house, but for 3 rental properties across town. properties that had been generating income for years, income that Robert had been automatically reinvesting. I called the property management company listed on the papers. "Mrs. Williams, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was a wonderful man, very smart with his investments. Can you tell me about the rental income?" "Of course. You're currently netting about $4,800 per month from the 3 properties. Your husband always had us deposit it directly into the investment account. Would you like to change those arrangements?" $4,800 per month. I'd been worrying about grocery bills when I was earning almost $5,000 a month from properties I didn't even know I owned. The final folder was labeled Legal Documents, Emergency. Inside was a letter in Robert's handwriting. "My dearest Diane, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably feeling overwhelmed by finances. Don't be. You're a wealthy woman, and I've made sure you'll never want for anything. But more importantly, you have power now. Real power. Don't let anyone, including our children, make you feel small or dependent. You worked for this security too, through 43 years of being my partner. The lawyer's name is Robert Hutchinson. No relation. He has my complete instructions for protecting you. Call him if anyone pressures you about money or tries to make you feel like a burden. You are not a burden. You are a force. All my love, Robert." I sat there crying. Not from sadness, but from a strange mix of gratitude and rage. Robert had protected me even in death, but I'd been acting like a helpless victim instead of a powerful woman. I called Robert Hutchinson immediately. "Mrs. Williams, I've been wondering when you'd call. Your husband made me promise to look after you. Mr. Hutchinson, I need to understand my situation completely. You're worth approximately $2.3 million, Mrs. Williams. Your husband was very thorough in his planning. $2.3 million. The number didn't even compute. And the Williams Family Trust? Ah, yes. Robert set that up to protect your assets. As the sole trustee, you have complete control, but the structure protects the money from family members who might not have your best interests at heart." Robert had seen this coming. Somehow he'd known. That night, I looked at myself in the mirror for the first time, really looked. I saw Robert's widow, yes, but I also saw a woman with resources, options, and power. A woman who had been letting her son and daughter-in-law treat her like she was worthless when she could buy their dream house twice over. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom, Jessica and I have been talking. We think maybe it's time to discuss your living situation. Jessica's mother suggested some really nice assisted living places." I smiled as I answered. "That's interesting, Michael, because I've been doing some thinking about living situations too. After discovering I was worth $2.3 million, my son called to discuss moving me to assisted living. I decided it was time to educate him about power." "Assisted living?" I repeated into the phone, my voice carefully neutral. "Yes, Mom. Jessica's mother knows about these wonderful places. Very nice, full of people your age. You'd have so much more social interaction than sitting alone in that big house. Sitting alone in my $400,000 house that I owned outright." The irony wasn't lost on me. "Jessica's mother has experience with this?" I asked. "Well, she helped transition her own mother a few years ago. She knows the best facilities, how to make the process smooth. She's offering to help us find the right place for you." Us. As if I wasn't capable of making my own decisions. "That's very generous of Mrs. Patterson. I'm sure these places are expensive." "That's the thing, Mom. We've been looking into your finances, just to help you understand, and we think the sale of your house could cover several years of care. Maybe with some additional support from whatever Dad left you." My jaw clenched. They'd been looking into my finances. "I see. And you've already chosen some places for me to visit?" "Actually, Mrs. Patterson has a friend who runs a lovely facility about an hour away. Very exclusive, very well managed. She could get you on the waiting list. An hour away. Far enough to make casual visits unlikely." "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mom. Why didn't you defend me at your party?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. "What do you mean?" "When Jessica and her mother dismissed your father's family heirloom like it was garage sale junk, when they made it clear I wasn't welcome in your new home, why didn't you say anything?" "Mom, that's not—" Jessica was just stressed, and her mother is very particular about design. It wasn't personal. Everything about it was personal, Michael. That afternoon, I met with Robert Hutchinson at his office. I'd never been there before. Robert had always handled these meetings, but the receptionist treated me like royalty. "Mrs. Williams, your husband spoke of you often. He was very proud of you." Mr. Hutchinson was a distinguished man in his 60s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Your son has been asking questions about your estate," he said without preamble, "both directly to you and indirectly through other family members. You know about that? Your husband anticipated this possibility, especially if you remarried or if your children became financially interested in your well-being." He pulled out a thick folder. Robert set up several protective measures. First, the family trust can't be touched by anyone but you. Second, your will currently leaves everything to your children equally, but that can be changed at any time. Changed? Your husband was very specific. If your children ever tried to manipulate you financially or push you into care you didn't want, you should have the power to adjust their inheritance accordingly. He really thought they might do this? Robert loved your children, Mrs. Williams, but he also understood that money changes people. He wanted you protected. Mr. Hutchinson leaned forward. "May I ask what prompted today's visit?" I told him about the assisted living conversation, about the party, about the systematic exclusion and financial investigation. "I see." His expression grew cold. "And I suppose they've found some convenient facility that would require selling your home? An hour away, run by a friend of Jessica's mother. How convenient for them to have you isolated and your largest asset liquidated." "What are my options, Mr. Hutchinson?" "Many. But first, I think it's time your son learned exactly who he's dealing with. Your husband left specific instructions for this situation. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it in Robert's handwriting. He wrote this for you to read when you were ready to stop being a victim and start being a warrior." That evening, I opened Robert's letter with shaking hands. His words would give me the courage to do what needed to be done. "Diane, if you're reading this, someone is trying to control you. It's time to remind them exactly whose daughter you are." After reading Robert's final letter, I decided it was time to stop being a victim and start being a warrior. My first move would shock everyone. Robert's letter had been short but powerful. "Diane, if you're reading this, someone is trying to control you. Remember what your father taught you when you were young. Never let anyone mistake kindness for weakness. You are Dorothy Jenkins's daughter. You once told off a bank president who tried to cheat us on our first mortgage. That woman is still in there. It's time to remind them exactly whose daughter you are. Use your power, sweetheart. I gave it to you for a reason. Your devoted husband, Robert." I sat in his chair, remembering that day at the bank. I'd been only 25, but when that banker tried to add illegal fees to our mortgage, I'd marched into his office and threatened to report him to state regulators. We got our loan at the promised rate. That woman, the one who'd fought for her family, who'd worked 2 jobs, who'd built a life through sheer determination, she was still here. She'd just been buried under 5 years of grief. The next morning, I called Michael. "Mom, I'm so glad you called. Jessica and I were just talking about visiting that assisted living facility this weekend. Actually, Michael, I've made a decision about my living situation." "Oh?" He sounded pleased. "That's wonderful. We're so proud of you for being practical about this." "Yes, I've decided to sell the house." That's great, Mom. Really great. Mrs. Patterson will be so pleased her advice helped. I'm also liquidating some of my assets, simplifying my life, you know." Smart thinking. Jessica's mother always says it's important to plan ahead. I could hear Jessica in the background, asking excitedly about details. "There's just one thing, Michael." "What's that?" "I've decided not to go into assisted living after all." The silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Mom? But we talked about this. You agreed it was the best option." "I never agreed to anything, Michael. You and Jessica decided it was the best option for you. I've decided on something different." "What do you mean?" "I'm buying a condo in downtown Charleston, 27th floor, ocean view. I've already put in an offer." "Charleston? Mom, that's 8 hours away." "Yes, it is. Far enough from people who think I'm a burden. Close enough to my college roommate who actually enjoys my company." "Mom, you can't be serious. What about us?" For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. What about you, Michael? You've made it very clear that I don't fit into your new life. Mom, that's not… Look, maybe we moved too fast with the assisted living idea. Maybe we can work something out. The only thing we need to work out is why you've been investigating my finances behind my back. Another long silence. Michael, did you really think I wouldn't find out? That I was so helpless I wouldn't notice my own son treating me like an incompetent child? We were trying to help. No, you were trying to control. There's a difference. I could hear Jessica's voice in the background, more urgent now. Tell Jessica she can stop whispering to you. I can hear her. Look, Mom, why don't we all sit down and talk about this reasonably? That's a wonderful idea, Michael. Why don't you, Jessica, and Mrs. Patterson come to dinner this Sunday? I have some things I'd like to discuss with all of you. Dinner? At your place? Yes, 7 o'clock. I'll be cooking Robert's famous pot roast, the one Mrs. Patterson said was so heavy at Christmas. Mom, I don't think… 7 o'clock, Michael. Don't be late. I hung up and smiled. It was time for the Williams family to have a real conversation. After demanding a family dinner, I spent a week preparing the most important meal of my life. But I wasn't just cooking food, I was cooking justice. Sunday morning, I woke up early and prepared Robert's pot roast with military precision. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted everything to be perfect when I destroyed their illusions. I set the dining room table with our best china, the Lenox set my mother had given us for our wedding. I'd been saving it for special occasions for 40 years. Well, this was special. At exactly 6:45, I heard cars in my driveway. Through the window, I watched Michael and Jessica get out of their BMW, followed by Mrs. Patterson emerging from a rental car like she was arriving at the Met Gala. I smoothed my dress, the same navy blue one from the party, and opened the door. Right on time, I said pleasantly. Come in. Jessica looked nervous. Mrs. Patterson looked annoyed. Michael looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Mom, the house smells amazing, Michael said, trying to break the tension. Thank you, sweetheart. I know how much you love my pot roast. Mrs. Patterson surveyed my dining room with barely concealed disdain. What a cozy space, Diane. Thank you, Beverly. Robert and I were very happy here. We sat down to eat, and for the first few minutes, everyone made stilted small talk about the weather and the food. Finally, Jessica cleared her throat. Mom Williams, Michael told me about your Charleston idea. We're all a little concerned about such a big decision. Are you? How thoughtful. It's just that Charleston is so far away, and at your age, being alone in a new city… Jessica, how old do you think I am? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Well, you're 70-something? I'm 68, the same age as your mother, Beverly. Mrs. Patterson's fork paused halfway to her mouth. But Beverly travels alone, runs her own household, makes her own decisions. Why do you think I can't do the same? That's different, Jessica said quickly. Mom's always been independent. And I've been dependent? Is that what you think? Michael finally spoke up. Mom, we're just worried about you. After Dad died, you seemed so… lost. I was grieving, Michael. There's a difference between grieving and being incompetent. I stood up and walked to the sideboard where I'd placed a folder. Since you're all so concerned about my decision-making abilities, I thought you should know exactly what kind of decisions I'm capable of making. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is my property portfolio. I own this house outright, plus 3 rental properties that generate $4,800 per month in income. Jessica's eyes widened. This is my investment portfolio. Current value, $1.8 million. Michael's mouth fell open. And this is my life insurance payout, $750,000. Mrs. Patterson had stopped eating entirely. Combined net worth, approximately $2.3 million. The silence was deafening. Now, I continued, sitting back down, perhaps someone can explain to me why you think a woman worth over $2 million needs to be in assisted living. Mom, Michael stammered, we had no idea you were so… We didn't know about Dad's investments. Because you never asked. You just assumed I was some helpless widow who needed managing. Jessica's face had gone pale. We were only trying to help. No, Jessica. You were trying to control. There's a difference. I turned to Mrs. Patterson. Beverly, you seem quiet. Don't you have any advice about managing my assets? Mrs. Patterson's composure finally cracked. We thought, Michael said you were struggling financially. Michael said I was struggling. Interesting. Michael, when did you tell Beverly I was struggling? My son looked like he wanted to disappear. Mom, I never said, because I have to wonder why you'd give anyone that impression. Unless, of course, you were hoping they'd help you solve my problem. I stood up again, my voice calm but deadly serious. Here's what's going to happen. You're all going to listen very carefully to what I have to say next. Because your futures, all of your futures, depend on understanding exactly who you're dealing with. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I am not your problem to solve. I am not your burden to manage. And I am definitely not your inheritance to count. With my family sitting in stunned silence around my dining room table, I decided it was time to show them exactly what their betrayal was going to cost them. Let me paint you a picture of how this is going to work, I said, still standing at the head of my own table, the table where I'd served thousands of family meals over the years. First, Michael and Jessica. You've spent months treating me like an inconvenience, investigating my finances, planning my future without consulting me, replacing me with Beverly at family events. I pulled out another document from my folder. This is my current will. As of last month, you were each inheriting equal shares of my estate, approximately $1.1 million each. Michael's relief was visible. Jessica actually smiled. However, this morning I met with my lawyer. I've made some adjustments. The smiles faded. Michael, your inheritance is now contingent on one simple condition. You will publicly apologize to me in front of the same people who witnessed my humiliation at your party. You will explain that you made a mistake, that you allowed your wife and mother-in-law to convince you that your mother was somehow less important than Mrs. Patterson. Mom, I'm not finished. My voice had taken on a steel edge that surprised even me. Jessica, your inheritance has been reduced to $10,000. Just enough to show that the omission was intentional, not an oversight. What? Jessica's voice was a whisper. You see, Jessica, I learned something interesting about inheritance law. A daughter-in-law has no legal claim to her mother-in-law's estate. None. Every dollar you might have received was a gift from me. A gift you've shown me you don't deserve. And Beverly, I turned to Mrs. Patterson, who had been trying to make herself invisible. Beverly, I've been thinking about your advice regarding assisted living. So thoughtful of you to research facilities for me, particularly facilities that happen to be expensive enough to require selling my home. Mrs. Patterson's face went white. I called Sunset Manor. You know, the facility your friend runs. Interesting conversation. Turns out your friend is more than a friend. She's your business partner. You get a finder's fee for every resident you bring in. The gasp from Jessica was audible. Beverly, you came to my son's house not as a helpful mother-in-law, but as a businesswoman. You saw a wealthy widow and dollar signs. That's not... I never... Mrs. Patterson stammered. The referral fee is $15,000 per placement, plus 3% of the first year's fees. Quite a profitable friendship. So here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice deadly calm. Beverly, you're going to get in your rental car and drive back to Denver. You're never going to contact my son again with helpful suggestions about managing his mother. Mom, Michael started, but I held up my hand. Jessica, you're going to decide whether you want to be part of this family or Beverly's business plan, because you can't be both. And Michael, you're going to decide whether you're my son or Jessica's puppet, because I'm done pretending there's no difference. I walked to the front door and opened it. Beverly, your Uber is probably here. I didn't call an Uber, she said weakly. I did, 5 minutes ago. As Mrs. Patterson gathered her purse and hurried toward the door, Jessica stood up. Mom Williams, please, can't we work this out? We're family. I looked at her for a long moment. No, Jessica. Family doesn't try to institutionalize each other for profit. Family doesn't plot behind closed doors about finances. Family doesn't humiliate each other in public. But what about Michael? What about our future? I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. That, my dear, depends entirely on what you do next. After exposing my family's betrayal and Mrs. Patterson's business scheme, I gave them a choice: respect or nothing. Here's what happened next. The week after that dinner was the longest of my life. Michael called twice, both times hanging up before saying anything meaningful. Jessica left a voicemail asking if we could start over. I deleted it. Mrs. Patterson, however, made one final play. She called my lawyer. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Hutchinson said when he called me, I just had the most interesting conversation with Mrs. Beverly Patterson. She wanted to know if your estate planning was legally sound and whether your children might have grounds to contest any changes you've made. How did she get your name? She didn't. She called 3 other estate lawyers in town first. Word travels in legal circles. The audacity was breathtaking. Even after being exposed, Beverly was still scheming. What did you tell her? I told her that my client was a woman of sound mind who had every right to distribute her assets as she saw fit, and that any attempt to contest her will would result in the estate's full legal resources being deployed against the challenger. 2 days later, Beverly returned to Denver. Permanently. 3 weeks after the dinner, Michael appeared at my door. Alone. Mom, can we talk? I let him in, but didn't offer coffee. He looked tired, older somehow. Jessica and I have been talking. Actually, we've been fighting. She thinks you're being unreasonable, but... He sat down heavily in Robert's chair. But I keep thinking about Dad. About what he would say if he knew how I'd treated you. What do you think he'd say? I think he'd be ashamed of me. For the first time in months, I felt a crack in my anger. He always said you were the strongest woman he knew. He said you could handle anything life threw at you. I should have remembered that, instead of treating you like you were fragile. Michael, I was never fragile. I was grieving. There's a difference. I know that now. Jessica has different ideas about family, about how things should work. And what do you think? He was quiet for a long time. I think I married someone who doesn't understand that some things are more important than money or social status. That's something you'll have to work out with Jessica. What if she can't change? What if she can't see you the way I see you? I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 34 years old, successful, handsome. But in that moment, he looked like the little boy who used to climb into my lap when he was scared. Then you'll have to decide what kind of man you want to be, Michael. Your father's son, or Beverly Patterson's son-in-law. 6 months later, my life looks nothing like I expected. I kept the house. Charleston was a beautiful dream, but this is where Robert and I built our life together. I wasn't going to let anyone drive me away from our home. Michael and Jessica separated in March. He moved into a small apartment downtown, and we have lunch every Sunday. Jessica moved back to Denver to live with her mother. The divorce should be final next month. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember who my real family is, Michael told me last Sunday. Sarah, my daughter, came to visit last month. She was expecting an apology, but got an education instead. I never realized how much money Dad left you, she said, clearly shocked. Money your father and I earned together through 43 years of marriage. Money I have every right to protect from people who would manipulate me. I just thought, after Dad died, you seemed so sad. I was sad, Sarah. I lost the love of my life, but sad doesn't mean helpless. I've learned things about myself this year that I never knew. I learned that grief can make you vulnerable, but it doesn't have to make you weak. I learned that people will mistake kindness for stupidity if you let them. Most importantly, I learned that Robert's death didn't end my story. It began a new chapter. I volunteer at a legal aid clinic now, helping other widows understand their rights. You'd be amazed how many women my age have family members helping them with their finances. Mrs. Patterson's scheme wasn't unique. It was a template. But I also learned something else. When you stand up for yourself, when you refuse to be diminished, other people notice. Real friends, real family, real allies appear. Last week, I got a call from a woman named Helen, referred by the legal aid clinic. Mrs. Williams, my daughter-in-law is pressuring me to move to assisted living. She says it's for my own good, but something doesn't feel right. Tell me about this assisted living facility, Helen. It's run by a woman named Beverly Patterson. She's supposedly a friend of my daughter-in-law's family. I smiled. Helen, I think we need to have a conversation. A long one. As I sit here in Robert's chair, my chair now, looking at our family photos, I realize something profound. My scars didn't weaken me. They revealed the strength that was always there. They thought they were breaking me, They were actually freeing me. And that, I think, is the greatest wisdom of all. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who teach you exactly how powerful you really are. My name is Diane Williams. I'm 68 years old. I'm worth $2.3 million. And I'm nobody's victim.